All right, hello, and welcome to another episode of To the Stars, an astrology an astrology and intuition podcast. My name is Alexander Kriech. I'm your host. Today we're doing something a little different. We're talking about astrology, but I don't know if you've listened to my podcast before. There's really not a lot of indications that I'm also a huge nerd on top of it. It's a lot of role playing games that I'm doing outside of when I'm not doing astrology and psychic readings and stuff. So today I'm having one of my really good friends and a fellow magician and tarot reader. His name is Aster. Hi, thanks for joining me and finally doing this episode with me. We've talked about it for a
Since
couple months
November.
now. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So if I didn't mention it already, we're talking about the astrology of the wildly popular role-playing fantasy game Baldur's Gate 3. If you have no idea what we're talking about, maybe stick around because you might learn something about the archetypes in astrology and maybe how charts come together. If you found your way here because you're a huge fan of the game, but you don't know a lot about astrology, you might really enjoy this episode. So let me introduce my friend Aster really quick. So Aster is a professional tarot reader, esoteric teacher, and fellow fantasy nerd located in Alexandria, Virginia. He has studied tarot and metaphysics for 22 years. And yeah, so we're going to talk about essentially the zodiacal archetypes and how you can understand them through fictional characters. So you can discover more about him or book a reading with him on his TikTok or Instagram at Aster Soluna. His handle and social links will be posted in the show notes. So thanks for joining me. I'm fully pumped that we're doing this, even though maybe 5 people will listen. I don't know, but I'm just let's talk about it. I don't really care.
Honestly, in the prep work for this, it helped me even understand a little bit more about the house system, because I really only know enough astrology to dive deeper with tarot and natal charts. I'm not a super transit girl, which I know you are.
Yeah.
So it really helped me to understand that a little bit more. And
yeah, I mean, I'm more specialized in astrology, but we still speak the same language.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Tarot would not be tarot without astrology. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and anyone who's listening, Aster is really, really, really good tarot reader. There are always through whatever method you use, I just think that you can get really good information from spirit to help you in your path and whatever, give you insight. And the first time we actually traded readings and I got a reading from him, it was just spookily dead on. Because went into finances and all this stuff. I was like, how'd you know I was worried about that thing specifically from that card? So yeah, it's nice to have someone that I vibe with on a professional level, but also on hi, I'm hour 80 into this game. Can we talk about what happened here for a second? So
yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about the fact before we dive into when we talk about the astrology of Baldur's Gate, we're going to be talking about the fictional, our take on what their big 3 astrology would be. So their sun, their moon, and their rising. And we'll talk about what the sun, moon, and rising means, as well as maybe how we arrived to that conclusion. But before we get there, I want to talk about I don't know, the fact that we're both into fantasy and stuff. And do you think that lends itself well to being a professional psychic and witch and magician? Talk to me about that for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like understanding fantasy is understanding the hero's journey, which is also tarot. By being able to understand what this character is serving in more than one way, right?
Right.
The plot line / what personality they're bringing to the table. We're able to understand these archetypes and these characters that, different stories will feature them in different ways, but on the whole, these characters have remained the same throughout time, right? So you have the warrior, the hero, the high priestess, or the magician, right? We have these ideals in our head, and these different planetary influences can really help to build a character. And so I think what's exciting about today is we're kind of doing the reverse, where we're okay, we have a character. What would be the influences that we think here? How do they jive together? And it can just give you a deeper understanding, both on a metaphysical level and on a storytelling level. I don't know.
Yeah. How long have you been like a fantasy nerd? Like, are you like
Can-
sci-fi too? And then also, how long have you been interested in occult metaphysical things too?
I feel like fantasy came first,
Hmm.
and then the occult came in the teenage years. So,
Okay,
being a 8, 9, 10-year-old wanting to dissociate from
for
everything
sure,
that's going on in life, it's like books. These are a great escape. These are a
for
great place
sure.
to go. And then video games as well. So,
Oh
I
yeah.
think honestly, Baldur's Gate on the console was my first taste of like video game fantasy, and it was like, oh, I'm here
Dark
for this. I
Alliance.
can cast spells. Yeah, Dark
Yeah,
Alliance.
yeah.
My brother and I rented that game from Blockbuster, played all weekend without fighting, and we were just like, "This
Hmm.
was good." Like,
Okay, what a victory for your parents. Good. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
good
yeah.
for you. No fighting with your sibling all weekend. That's crazy. Yeah, I feel like I definitely have always been. I mean, I was raised on PC games, so I was raised on like really old role playing games. That
Yeah, it's
I
a
would see
family
my
thing for you, yeah.
yeah, because my dad kind of raised us on games because he's a big computer guy, and then we played Dungeons and Dragons a little bit growing up, but I loved watching him play like the original Baldur's Gate, like 1 and 2 on PC, where it was like this, these like little tiny sprites kind of representing your character
Yeah,
and the character portraits on the side, and like the music was amazing. The like the story was incredible. The combat was so fun, and I loved like Dungeons and Dragons style party building adventure types of stuff. And yeah, I was always into I love role playing games. I still do, and that's kind of the only genre I play now. Occasionally, I'll delve into like a Civilization like 4 or 5 or something, but yeah, but at the same time, I was always interested in like life after death, ghosts, paranormal, UFOs, all that kind of stuff, and like reading about psychic stuff from the time I was in like second grade, like ESP and everything. So, but I feel like our generation, because are you an '89 baby as well?
yeah, Scorpio
Yeah.
Pluto.
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah, absolutely. That whole kind of generational astrology thing where I feel like gays our age are like children of Buffy and Charmed
yeah, yeah.
also,
We
you
love
know?
witches and cryptids, and
Yes.
I don't know if we're allowed to cuss on this podcast.
Oh, absolutely. No.
Yeah, these
Everything is labeled
classes.
explicit. Totally.
We're
Yeah.
muted.
Yes. So I feel like it's all kind of tied together because even like my favorite Buffy podcasts talk about like they talk about like Marvel things and pop cultural things. A lot of them are like, oh yeah, I'm like a witch too or a tarot reader, and I've been obsessed with Buffy for years. And I'm like, it feels very kind of there's just I feel like there's this kind of common thread. But
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
so let's talk about an overview of the game for anyone who doesn't know what the hell we're talking about and has somehow just stumbled their way here. So uh, it won Game of the Year actually for 2023, which I didn't know that was a thing, but I guess that's like a really big deal because I only followed gaming news when it's relevant to me. So I'm like, oh wow, okay, crazy. But it was a huge game. I mean, as far as sales and everything, it seemed like it was like a huge success. It was in development for years. It is an immensely detailed and deep like role playing adventure game. It's fully voice acted. The world is built with so much detail. I'm probably going to be on my third playthrough pretty soon. I'm almost done with my second playthrough, and I probably put like 300 hours into it at this point. If I like clock my Steam game time, it says I'm like 280 something right now, and I'm like, okay, I'm probably going to be hitting 300 hours. Whatever. I don't watch that much TV. This is like my
Yeah,
pastime,
exactly. It makes sense.
you know. Yeah, and but essentially there will be some spoilers too, so if you haven't like beaten it or something, I'll probably be spoiling a couple things, maybe
Yeah.
even for you because you haven't beat it yet. So honestly, this is your fault at this point.
Way to just like throw me out there. I can't
Yeah.
beat it. I don't like ending things. I love
Oh,
stories
okay.
to continue forever. And
Okay,
so it's like,
well,
oh, we're getting to the last chapters. Why am I giving
honestly,
up?
it's your Libra sun is coming through that
No,
maybe
100%.
it's
Like, I
gonna
don't,
start something but not finish it.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
you know
I just, yeah.
uh
Into Continuum, I would like the story to not end.
totally.
I've also been spoiled on a couple of things that happened to my favorite characters in the end game. And I'm like,
Oh, got
I
it.
can't digest
Yeah,
that quite yet.
yeah.
So,
Side note, did you play The Sims at all?
Oh my god, yeah, I was
Were
obsessed.
you more of a house builder than
I
like a game player, or like, because I feel like you're a house builder type that's like building
so
like the
I did
fantasy.
have like families of like my friends that I would like play with, but mostly it would be to decorate the homes and build them and
Clocked.
come up with layouts and
I,
yeah.
yeah, bitch, I clocked you on that one. I was like,
Yeah.
you're a house building Sims gay. I know.
I love
So,
it. It's fun.
I totally. I was more into creating messy drama with my Sims and
Mhm.
having full character arcs for them, overcoming adversity, being haunted by the ex-lover that they drowned in the pool in their mansion, that kind of shit. Getting pregnant by different men. I loved it. So anyway, back to Baldur's Gate. So anyway, main kind of a quick story arc before we get into it. Character development in this game is huge,
Yeah.
and having multiple different endings. Your characters, you can either create a custom character
Mhm.
and see the world through their eyes, or you can play as one of these six party members that join you in this game. And essentially, the game begins with you waking up on this weird ship, and you are infected by a tadpole that is in your brain that is slowly transforming you into that of a horrifying monster called a mind flayer, in which it consumes your soul and mind and body, and you become part of this like evil collective of telepathic beings that are seeking to dominate the planet that you're on, and you have to find a way to stop you transforming into this thing, and also you eventually stop or join the plot to do this, depending on what kind of
Yeah,
like
there's a lot of
morality
free
path
reign.
you
It's
take.
part of the fun, right?
Exactly. You can be super evil, you can be somewhere in the middle, you can be a paragon of good. Um, and so yeah, that's essentially, and then so along the way you're having adventures and exploring and going on lots of different side quests. And yeah, that's Baldur's Gate 3. So
It's
is there
building a
anything
community as well as a major part of the game, meeting
yeah,
all the different influences on the story. It's very
yeah.
reminiscent of Dungeons and Dragons, which is what the rule base is based on. I've played Dungeons and Dragons for 15 years, and so that was a
Hmm.
big thing for our community was to finally have this game. So yeah,
Yeah,
very open world.
yeah. The original first two games came out in like the 90s, so this sequel has been a long time like in
And
development.
yeah,
And so yeah, and you can either like explore and talk a lot and like, find treasure, and you can treat it like a dating sim where you're more primarily interested in the romantic relationships you can build. I'm very combat oriented, where I'm like, I'm on like the toughest difficulty setting. I'm constantly optimizing my like party members' abilities and blowing up everything.
I'm just here for the story
Totally. Totally.
and the social
So
interactions and learning
yes.
backstories.
Yeah, because there's a lot of richness and depth to be found with the characters that join you and the relationships that you make with them, romantic or platonic, or not. So, and so let's start by talking about a little bit of background of the character, and then also what we think their astrology would be, kind of what they are giving as far as their astrology.
Yeah, before we go character by character, I do want to say
Yeah.
so Alex and I have created our own list individually.
Yes.
And this is going to be exciting to like compare and see if my
Hmm.
vibes and character analysis from like a speaking and romantic point, which helped me determine their big three, like match your astrology expertise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited
How
to
did
see
you
what
come to
we.
your answers, by the way?
I mean, okay. So I thought of the zodiac wheel first, and I kind of went more with. It depended. Honestly, it depended on each character. I kind of thought about like what is the energy that they're giving me,
Yeah,
and then also, but a lot of the time I started with the rising sign. So
that's
rising
fun.
sign would be your physical body appearance, how you put yourself
Mhm.
out into the world, how you sort of navigate your life. And the rising sign determines the architecture of the rest of the chart and how all the different life areas and houses are linked together. But with some characters, it was more like, here are the archetypes I'm getting from this character. How can I make this fit into this elegant like thing? But then it was also characters that had like certain relationships with each other. I was like, oh, they're like total parallels or opposites, like to their various signs and how they're interplayed. With this one pairing I have specifically
Will
in
and
here.
Karlach? Maybe.
Mine was Shadowheart and Lae'Zel, because those are my girls,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They have interesting interactions for me too.
Yeah, exactly.
That's super exciting. For me, because the game is so social based and like conversation based, I started at their Mercury, which I know we're not talking about today. But I started there, knowing that the sun could not be like more than one sign away, and so that kind of helped me to figure out. And then, of course, the body type, like for more than a couple of mine, the body type is totally rising. And so then it was like, okay, does their sun fit with that house based on that rising and blah? Yeah.
Totally. Oh my God. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, well, let's start with Shadowheart. So brief overview of her character. She is you meet her, she is a priestess of Shar, this goddess of like shadow and like misery and just super emo goddess essentially. And Shadowheart has black hair and she's very devoted to her cause. She's very mysterious and she's missing a lot of her memories, and she sort of has this like mysterious artifact with her, and she doesn't know what it does, or she just knows her mission. And you find out kind of in the game that she's sort of that her main goddess and the priests and priestesses associated with said goddess basically kidnapped her as a child, tortured her parents, and you can make a choice with her whether to stay on that path or kind of go more down like a path of like the light, essentially. So, and she's kind of like people's favorite character, the most romanced character. Yes, for sure. Because I'm very gay, but I'm like, she's super pretty. I totally want to make her my girlfriend. I totally understand it.
Well, I mean, she serves the gay archetype of beautiful feminine, right? Like that dark beauty. Like every gay that I know is into that witchy aesthetic.
Dark witchy badass witch. Sorry,
which
go ahead.
Kind of leads into what I think her rising is. How are we going to do that? Are we going to shout it at the same time? Like, what are we going to do?
No, you go first. You go first, and then I'll go.
I think she's Scorpio rising.
Same.
Dark beauty, right?
Same.
So it's the bangs.
Yeah.
Like they're giving like rockabilly. They're giving exactly what we were talking about. Totally. Anything else for you? It's the eyes too.
Yeah, and for me, it was also the way I felt, and I'll talk about when I get into my thing about the way that her sun and moon were in her chart. And so Scorpio, but in Scorpio rising, it's like, the dark, the mysterious, like can frankly be prone to like, sort of like, you don't understand me. And like, it sort of gives this sort of like, because I have Scorpio rising too. And I'm like, okay, let's just like relax, Alex.
Yeah.
But like, also I have naturally dark features, which is a Scorpio rising thing, is your physical appearance and just having this sort of mysterious aura, right?
And her lines too at the beginning of the game where she's like, I don't think that's any of your business, or you know how she's like super like, you don't need to know my story, we're just here for now and blah blah blah, we're not friends. Like
it's and Scorpio also having an association with transformation as well, and just being very resilient, and she ends up going through a lot and really has a very transformative character arc, and really kind of depends on the ending, but I think kind of the ending that is sort of preferred is the one where she ends up going with the goddess of the moon and the light, and her hair color changes and she has this whole transformative thing to her appearance as well. So which is
absolutely
so
death and rebirth. I get it. I know what you're putting down without being too spoilery. I know what you're putting down.
Totally. Yes. Okay.
Which led me to so her moon. The moon is super important in her story arc in general, and it had to do with choices, right? So I'm like, okay, there's duality here. If she's a Scorpio rising, what house is going to make sense? I actually said Libra moon.
Okay.
Just because of the balance and like the sisters thing that she has going on, and then also that would put her moon in the 12th house, which is very like karmic stuff. I feel like very predetermined, like your issues with family and stuff like that. But that's kind of how I came about.
Also 12th house is imprisonment also. So it's giving being
like
it's
too?
and it's giving being kidnapped as a child, so Yeah, absolutely.
What'd you have?
Oh, okay. I'm going to give you my sun and the moon because they're linked together.
That makes sense.
So, I have her moon, and again, I was thinking her moon's really important because her new goddess is the goddess of the moon. So I was like, yeah. So I put her moon in the third house in Capricorn
Oh
because
shit. Okay.
number one, moon in Capricorn, it's the moon in her detriment. So she's not going to necessarily. Moon in Capricorn has a way of, it's like legendary perseverance, but it's not so much in self nurturing and like taking care of yourself or being in touch with your feelings, because it is ruled by Saturn, this cold planet about like limitation and delay and going without. That's very Shar, her like religion,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And also, Moon is mommy issues. Also, she has mommy issues with her main mother superior kind of energy, like later in the game.
Yeah, that's true.
And in ancient astrology, the third house, the moon being in the third house, the moon is in her joy, because the third house is the house of the goddess, essentially. So, like her moon being very tied up with her goddess, and the house of like daily rituals and having to do with like divination and all of this stuff, it felt interesting to have a complicated moon in that part of her chart. The other thing would be, I said she was an Aries sun.
Oh no.
Um,
I said Virgo, actually.
oh, I could see. Okay, well, here's the thing. I can see that. I can see Virgo a lot too. Aries sun would be in her sixth house if she's Scorpio rising. And this is using whole sign houses. So
Yeah.
and sixth house, there's frankly overlap between sixth house and Virgo. Frankly, like doesn't mean the same thing, but putting her sun, her sort of feisty Aries sun in the sixth house, frankly, I could, there's just like, there's devotion between Virgo and the sixth house sun. So go ahead.
That's interesting because I actually use the same aspect for another character to explain something very similar that has
Yeah.
overlap. So that's super interesting. So where we agreed, Scorpio rising, like for
Mhm.
sure. It's interesting that who rules the 11th? That's Aquarius would be 11th house, right?
I mean, in my opinion, signs don't rule houses, but
Okay.
there are overlaps between the meaning of the houses in the sign for sure. But I don't think signs rule houses necessarily.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah,
That could be
that's
that
like
could be a podcast.
yeah,
Because I know that a lot of people that I've seen on like TikTok especially do. So that could be interesting for you to kind of break down those.
Yeah, for sure. I think there are definitely differences, but like sixth house is like servitude, health, work, and service, and obviously there's some archetypes with Virgo where it's. And the thing is, with you're talking about with Virgo, like I can see that with her too. Absolutely.
Yeah, because Virgo, like, how many Virgos do you know that are in nursing? Shadowheart is a cleric. Like, she automatically comes with healing abilities.
Yeah, totally.
But, well, I think.
Oh, I'm not saying that we have to agree at all.
We don't have to agree. Okay, perfect.
No. But I could see Virgo really easily with her, absolutely. So, but also sixth house is health and work and
true.
service.
That's true. So that overlap.
And frankly, like one of the first scenes that you get with her is her about to murder the next character that we're going to talk about, which is also like Aries energy. So, okay, so are you ready to move on, or do you want to talk about?
I mean, I think that we agreed on like, so when I put down in my notes like Shadowheart, very earthy, very watery. Because I also started out with like elements too, so earth, water.
Oh, that's smart. That's smart.
Which does reflect what you put as well.
Yeah, I could see Virgo sun quite easily for her, but I still see that fire in her as well. So I don't know. I'm willing to see the Virgo thing, but that would also put her sun in the 11th house, which I don't know.
Which would make her like overly friendly, and I don't think.
I mean, not necessarily, because like I don't think Virgo is a necessarily overly friendly sign necessarily, but I don't know.
True.
I could see Virgo. So okay.
Let's talk about Lae'Zel.
Yeah, speaking of fire, yes. So Lae'Zel is the next character we're going to talk about. Lae'Zel is a Githyanki, so she's like a race. She's like a member of like a race of like almost like reptilian-looking humanoids, essentially, that are very warlike, that are not from this dimension. And
Their social
she,
customs may not match ours.
yeah, very kind of brutal people. And she is sort of trapped here in this realm because she was infected with this tadpole. And the race of mind flayers are her people's like mortal enemy. She is very devoted to her god, to her god queen, and she's sort of very singular in her purpose. And she's a warrior. She's very brutal. She's very forthright, but she's very loyal. And she's very brusque and just kind of speaks her mind and feels very out of place. But as the game progresses, she becomes more empathetic and is often, I feel like, emotionally observant, which I find really interesting. And she's probably my favorite character. She's my girl for sure. So
At least that's the case for you.
yeah. No, for sure.
She,
Aster hates her, but
no,
that's
listen,
fine.
she opened her mouth and came at me the wrong way. I'm a squishy Mercury Virgo, and our conversation styles just did not align. I did not like how she was talking to me, and so she just got bitch vied.
Did you leave her in camp the entire game, basically?
Okay, not the entire game because I'm a Libra and I have to balance out the party. So in Act
Right.
2, where it splits into two directions, I did my main party in the Shadowlands, and then I did the other stuff with my side party.
Okay, got it. Okay, so tell me your take. Just give me your whole take on her first.
Literally, if because of my lack of care for her, I was just going to write Aries Stellium. Done. But I will start with her rising. I don't know. I have written down something, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'm actually not too sure that I agree with it because all of her narrow features are starting to lead me a different way with her rising. So let me do with the one that I'm pretty sure that I vibe with, which is her sun being in Aries.
Okay.
The reason I did that is because I thought of her Mercury first, and I was like, she's a Mercury Aries.
Oh,
she's very blunt. She's very curt.
Yeah.
She's very like to the point. And then I was like, okay, so then that could only be a Taurus, an Aries, or a Pisces. And I was like, well, she's not any of those, either of those. So I stuck with Aries for her on that one. Yeah. What about you, Sun?
Okay. So, I said Aries. So, I mean, I was like, obviously, she's the Aries archetype all the way around, right? So I was like, Aries has to be. Literally, Aries has to be in there somewhere,
Next,
like Aries.
I put the symbol for Mars just as a reminder.
Exactly.
Like, this is very Mars.
Because Mars is the planet of war, conflict, fire, passion, fighting, swords, and steel. And so I was like, Mars rules Aries. It's giving Aries to me. I said Aries rising. Just because
she's coming across as first.
And I just was like, that just felt good. And also because the way I kind of set up her moon and sun, I said Capricorn sun.
Oh, that's so funny. I have Capricorn rising.
Do you? Okay.
We just flipped it.
Also, Mars, the planet, exalts in Capricorn. When Mars is in Capricorn, it is able to do martial things exceedingly well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that made sense to me. Also because of her singular, she has a lot of responsibility on her shoulders and a responsibility to her people and her queen. And that would put her sun in the 10th whole sign house. So the house of authority figures and like the king and the queen and like achievement. And I just felt like, so that's where she would sort of shine her light in her energy. I said, you'll probably disagree with me, but whatever. I felt because she softens over the game, and because she is initially hates fucking Shadowheart. Her and Shadowheart hate each other, and there is a scene in which you can let them fight it out, and one of them kills the other one, or you can convince them to stand down, and they really become closer and see eye to eye and really empathize with each other. And I said Moon in Cancer.
I knew you were going to say Cancer.
The reason I said that is because it would put her moon in the 4th house, which is tied to your ancestry, where you come from, your home, and family.
So I had Capricorn rising, right? which would put
Okay.
her moon. And I also said moon Aries, sun moon Aries. I was thinking new moon baby, knows who she
Yeah.
is, like
Yeah.
doesn't like hold back.
Yeah.
And so I have Aries, both of those being fourth house. And when I saw the moon was in the fourth house, I was like, yes, we're having issues with home. We're having
Yeah.
issues with like belonging. We're having like that kind of interaction in her chart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah. So
Well, I
I
thought.
think
Go ahead.
we're so close. We're so close to agreeing.
I
But
know, it's
Cancer
weird.
moon, though, Cancer moons are like, they are so lovey-dovey. And I'm just not feeling the love. Maybe I didn't use her enough to feel the love from her. And it could just be in my timeline. That it's
She.
different, but...
Yeah, because part of her arc is because she's very violence forward, basically. But if you think about her in context of what she's like within her people, Moon and Cancers may not be the most cuddly, but there is really intense connection to where she is from, and she is stuck on this planet where she is away from her home.
Yes.
So I just thought there was some interesting themes to explore there. And I just was like, there's a water energy underneath this sort of hard exterior, like, and maybe, and I just don't know if Gith Yankee moms are super nurturing. They're probably
they're
pick up that sword
right?
and try to kill your sibling, and hopefully you don't kill each other. But if you do, whatever, we're going to move on, like, so, but I feel like a human moon and Cancer would be different.
Yeah.
So that's my reasoning. What did you have as her moon before we move on?
Do what?
What did you have as her moon?
Wait,
yeah.
Aries.
For me, okay.
It would have put it in the fourth house.
Okay.
Moon in the fourth house is fact. Like, that's canon.
Totally.
Totally. As to what
totally
the sign placement is, unsure.
Yeah.
But you know her better than I do. You spent a lot more time with her. So I tend to...
I think Moon and Cancer might be a stretch, honestly, but I'm just like, whatever.
It's a little bit of a stretch, I feel like. I feel like
Yeah.
Moon Aries, it's that my emotions only run as deep as I let them. I have full control over every aspect of my emotions. Blah, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. Warrior, warrior, warrior.
Right. Right. So you had Capricorn rising for her?
Mm-hmm.
Before we move on? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, we still got Aries and Capricorn for her right away.
Yeah, no,
and a moon in fourth house. So that's fascinating. Yeah. Okay. So Gail next?
Yeah, that's my boyfriend.
Yeah, that was my first boyfriend as well, for sure. That's my husband. So my sister fucking hates Gale. She's like, oh, he's so boring. Like, because my sister's a DM also and plays Baldur's Gate 3. But I'm like, how dare you, first of all? I was like, anyway, okay. So Gale is a human wizard. Very sort of like witty academic type, very handsome. I feel like his background, it's sort of, part of his story is that he had a full on affair with his patron goddess, the goddess of magic, Mistra. Yeah. And when he is a bit of a prodigy, very kind of high achieving wizard. And what else do I say about Gale, actually, now that I think about it?
He has a very complicated relationship with that goddess. Spoiler alert, maybe. Bleep it
That's
out.
fine. I said spoiler at the top of the podcast, so anyone who's
literally is like, hey, go blow yourself up. Like, there's a lot of issues there. Overall, though, I just feel like he's a good boy. He's a lover.
For sure. He is a good boy, lover.
He's the camp cook.
He is.
Yeah, so I read that online. I don't know if it's canon or just part of somebody's fan fiction.
Okay, because I did not notice that. But anyway.
Which is one of the reasons I gave him his rising. So I have... I mean, that's enough about Gale. It's fine.
He's fine. And he's just... And somehow he has abs, which I don't understand. But he is very handsome, very nice hair.
Super gorgeous.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Almost went into his rising for me. It
Oh.
almost steered me towards maybe a fire sign rising or something like that. But for me, what sealed the deal was the 7th house placement. And so I think that Gale is a Taurus rising.
Okay.
Because it's the eating of the magical items too, right? But no, it's the 7th house Scorpio for me, which is magic and death and maybe representing an affair or romance of some kind with a goddess or like something on the other side, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
that witchy kind of woman vibe.
Hmm.
For sure, I put like earth and air. That's like his major combos for me.
Okay.
What made me think Taurus rising? Sorry. What made me think of his sun sign? I had to decide if he was a Mercury Virgo or Mercury Gemini. Either way, like
Hmm.
Mercury is at home for him.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yes.
and
Absolutely. Mercury,
so
because Mercury being, because he's a brilliant scholar and wizard, Mercury would be there being the planet of communication and literary things, right? So
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. The book smart, right? Um,
absolutely.
but then there's also that lover aspect, as in like pre patches, like he was just in love with you from the beginning. Yeah, no, yeah, he's like the most. He was the easiest person to romance because it was just like
Yeah.
right off the bat, like I'm in
Yeah.
love with you.
It's like, relax, bro. Like,
Yeah,
Jesus Christ. Why don't you clean up your fucking dinner that you made for us all and go
yeah,
to bed?
right.
Okay.
No,
So,
exactly. So pre patch, I might have said that his son was a Libra. Post patch, I don't know.
okay.
But yeah, what did you say his rising was?
His is not as well thought out as yours, I think, on my end. I
Gotcha.
said Gemini rising.
Okay, I could see why.
Because I felt like his chart ruler, because in astrology, your ascendant, the planet ruling your ascendant, also talks about life's direction, what you look like, your physical body, and it governs your entire
Hmm,
chart.
hmm.
So I thought if we have Gemini rising, his Mercury is the chart ruler, and Gemini being witty anyway. It's like witty, it's curious, it learns really quickly. He's really funny. I love my handsome, funny wizard. And also his sex scene is one of the best. I'm sorry, but like on the astral plane, are you serious? And
No,
by the way,
100.
my second playthrough where I played a chaotic, slutty version of myself, absolutely had sex with him and then broke up with him afterward because I was like, I'm sorry, I'm going to get with my sexy vampire instead. So I said he was Gemini rising with Mercury and Virgo ruling the chart.
Yeah.
Because that would mean Mercury in Virgo in astrology. Mercury rules Virgo, but it's also exalted there. It's like the super
Yeah.
special Mercury. And so, because Mercury is going to follow the sun really closely, I thought Sun in Libra, because that would put, yeah,
Yeah.
because I thought that would also put his sun in the fifth house of romance, sex, creativity, creative projects, and children, and his love affair with his goddess is a central arc to his story.
So
So,
the reason that I put so interesting Taurus rising, Sun Libra would be the sun in the sixth house, which can indicate like maybe some issues with body, maybe like 'cause, you know, his like affliction. Um,
absolutely. Yep. Yep.
because the sun isn't necessarily a happy camper in the sixth house. And so I thought maybe, especially if it was like afflicted negatively in some way, uh,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is what led me there. But I did have his moon in Gemini, so we do have Gemini,
Yeah.
Libra. What did you have his
He
moon?
is. Oh, I had. I just, the moon was kind of a throwaway for me. I wasn't really sure.
Gotcha.
I thought either moon in Cancer, because he is very monogamous. He's one of the characters in the game that you cannot
Yeah,
fuck around on him, and he like wants to marry you. Like,
yeah.
so to me, and
No
also
poly.
he, yeah, no, he's not open. His familiar, his magical talking animal assistant is a cat named Tara. He loves
Uh-huh.
Tara, and I felt like it felt like he just had a moon. I was getting the feeling of like mama's boy, like he was connected to his mother, like for sure. So it
No,
felt like moon in
totally.
Cancer or moon in Taurus, because moon can be mom and like your primary caregiver and nurturer. So I thought, so that would give him either a moon in the second house or a moon in the 12th house, which I could see moon in the 12th house because he really prefers a lot of his time to be locked away in his huge tower full of books, which is very 12th house energy. So I probably would say moon in Taurus, 12th house, because he was a great lay, very jealous in relationships and locked away in his tower of books. So I'm going to say moon in 12th house, Taurus.
Yeah,
What did
that
you
was
say his moon was? Oh, you said Gemini?
Gemini. Uh, it's the wit. It's the natural. Like without thinking about it, he's funny. Like he's never. I don't think he's ever trying to be funny. I just think some of the things he
Right.
says is naturally funny.
Totally. Yeah.
So naturally charismatic. Um, And then I guess that would have put the moon in the second house for me, which I don't know what necessarily that would say about him.
I mean, your second house can be also your stuff, like
Mhm.
if you have Moon in Gemini and you were you said Moon in Gemini for you or no?
Yeah. So that would be like
So
my Taurus rising.
yeah, so I mean, Moon in Gemini second house could be one's emotional connection to your intellectual stuff. Because I've seen second house be like, I have an intense connection to like my Funko Pops and my
Okay,
collectibles and
yeah. So
stuff.
like wizard hoarding.
Wizard, yeah, Moon and Gemini second house could easily be wizard hoarding, absolutely.
No, I
So
love it.
I could absolutely see your version of this chart, one
I
thousand
see too,
percent.
because I am a nerd and I had to make sure everything matches mathematically, and so I also did his Venus. I was like, how do you
Oh
get
yeah,
love? And I actually
yeah.
got Libra for him and his Venus, which led me to Libra Sun as well. So I was like, would he have a Sun Venus conjunct? He's very heart forward. He's very like,
Hmm.
I don't know, it's
And
different than
and
every.
also depending on, and also that would make Venus his chart ruler, and Venus being love, beauty, sex, aesthetics, all that stuff. I can see
Yeah.
it's very charming. And depending on the distance from his sun, from his Venus to the sun, it could be like you could have issues in relationships also because Venus could be combust the sun, like being burned up by the sun,
Or blown up.
essentially. Yeah, no, completely. And a major part of his story arc is, of course, the thing in his chest that his goddess is like, hey, we broke up and you suck, but I need you to blow yourself up for the good of the world.
Yeah,
And
that
he's
internal
like,
bomb. Go blow up that
yeah,
tower,
internal
please.
ticking time bomb. Yes. Actually, do you want to talk about, speaking of bomb, do you want to talk about Karlak next, then do Will after?
Yeah, we can do Cartlag next.
Let's do Karlak next because yeah, I was just like speaking of ticking bomb. Let's talk about Karlak. So why don't you why don't you give an overview on Karlak because you use her more than I do, correct?
I do. She is basically in my party at all times because I need like
Okay.
that panky character. Also, I
Yep.
just enjoy talking to her and listening to every
Yeah.
word that she says. I
Yep.
actually can't romance her in this playthrough because canonically for me, she's a lesbian, so I have to come through with
For sure. She is
like.
absolutely a dom top lesbian and just like
I
the best wife you would ever have.
She's the
For
best
sure.
one.
Yeah.
Let's see. Her whole thing is, well, I mean, you can't talk about her without talking about Will. So her whole thing, she has spent her whole life being controlled by what is her name? Shit. What's the demon?
I forget, but
Yeah, I forget.
she's a tiefling, so she's
Yeah,
like part
tiefling. She's
demon.
literally from the infernal plane tiefling,
Yep.
not necessarily like a
Mhm.
material world tiefling.
Yep.
And so she only gets drugged over into the prime material from the infernal through the ship that we talked about at the beginning. Her whole thing is trying to find basically a mechanic. Her heart is like an engine. And it's
Mhm.
trying to like burn up and destroy her. So her whole arc is finding like the person that can fix that because she really doesn't want to go back to the infernal plane. And yeah, it's a story about finding home in a new place and wanting to be where you belong as opposed to being forced to being in like a hellhole.
Yeah. And so she's like from a hell dimension.
Yeah.
She was enslaved, made she's a really great warrior, made to fight, but is really a good person, and she escapes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
she longs for connection and touch,
Mm-hmm.
but she can't touch anyone because she'll burn them up because she has this like infernal engine in her. Yeah, so a lot of her quest is repairing it so she doesn't explode,
Mm-hmm.
and she is trying desperately to stay on this plane and not return back to the hells where she came from because she can only survive by going back, otherwise she will explode essentially and die from fire. And um, yeah, so her arc can be really tragic. It depends on what path you take with her.
Yeah.
And but she's also very buoyant, really funny, really generous, and really
Just
connected.
the joy of the party.
Yeah,
She does a dance if you ignore her for 7 seconds. Like she's just
totally,
performative
totally.
and joyous and happy regardless of the situation because she's just so excited to not be in the place where she has
Yeah,
been her entire life.
yeah. and
I
just like accept,
adore her.
she needs acceptance. Yeah, and she's also, so she's canonically, she's a barbarian, wields giant weapons. If her loved ones and party members are threatened, she goes into a rage, which is a barbarian thing. And she also, her subclass talks to animals too. If you stick with that subclass. So what do you have for her? I'm curious what you have for Karlak.
I have her rising as Gemini
Okay.
because of the social and the, you know, everything's great, you know, like
Mhm.
that kind of mercurial bouncy vibe. I see her with like a
Yeah.
lot of energy. Let's see. That was really the main thing because she
Mhm.
honestly, unless you yourself romance her, she doesn't really talk about any previous romances or anything like that. So I didn't have a lot of that information to go off of. And I just felt very, like the symbol that I put next to her, so very mercurial and also very Jupiter energy, and so
Mhm.
those were the two that I was kind of vibing off of.
What do you mean by Jupiter energy, just in case someone's listening?
Like
Mm.
enthusiastic and
Yep.
hopeful and maybe like luck because you know she only got out of the infernal plane because of this weird situation that happened,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
they accidentally went to the infernal plane. The ship wasn't even supposed to be there, you know. So it's like this
Mhm.
wheel of
Mhm.
fortune and tarot, like this kind
Yeah.
of like ooh, like something's happened. And yeah, so those were my main influences. And then I was like, she's very air, she's very fire. Was kind of like the vibes that I was getting for her.
Yeah.
She's very, which you know, air and fire are the faster frequency elements. Earth and water being kind of the slower ones. So she's very jazz. She's very high frequency, and that's kind of where I started with her. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Okay. I definitely have Jupiter energy for her too. I was like, there. She's Sagittarius to me all the way.
Yeah.
But I would, but I was like, how am I going to get her there? So this is for me. I was like, we'll just say I'm not 100% committed
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
this at all, but I have Cancer rising. I feel like is her
Okay.
rising. Even though she's incredibly fiery and all this stuff, that's going to come later. So
Mm-hmm.
Cancer rising, connection. It's like it's emotional. It's about connection to your your
Yes.
clan
Yes.
and your loved ones. And I'm set because the moon rules Cancer, so the moon would rule her chart. I thought maybe the moon in Sagittarius because that
I
would
have
put
Moon in
her.
Sagittarius. Yeah.
Oh, do you? Okay, yeah.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, so here is someone whose chart ruler is in a fire sign, which would be like the rage and like the literal ticking time bomb in her chest. I could see
Mhm.
that. I said maybe her moon was conjunct Mars in her chart because Mars has to do with literal fire and combusting things,
Uh huh.
and also like temper, right? And and
Yeah.
just passion, right?
Passion
But
for sure.
and but with Sagittarius energy, we also have like home in faraway place or like travels, and like Sagittarius being about travel and faraway places and her being
Mm.
in Faerun instead of being like in the hells. And also just this feeling of like Sagittarius, because ruled by Jupiter, has this sometimes like this happy-go-lucky kind of energy, like we're living life by the seat of our pants a little bit. Let's
Yeah.
like hope for
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
best. This kind of this hopeful optimism that kind of comes through, and she really doesn't let a lot get to her. There's only one time in the game where she truly breaks down sobbing because she's like, "I don't want to die," like I cannot take it anymore.
Oh, I just got
And
chills.
I know, and you have not gotten there yet, but you'll know when you
I've
get there.
seen
It's
it.
in Act
No, I know
Three. Oh, you
exactly
have?
how. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and it makes me sad.
Yeah. So
Which
also
is
she
one of the
also
reasons I refuse to end the games.
also always whenever you talk to you, she says, "Hey soldier. Hey soldier, what's
Yeah.
up?" And so I thought her chart ruler with Mars, like relating to war and soldiers,
Mhm.
was an interesting thing for her. Also, we could also say her moon Mars in the sixth house of bodily injury. Also, just I think the ticking time bomb in her chest could be there as well.
Yeah.
I said sun. I think her sun could kind of go either way. I could actually see a Libra sun for her because of
Okay.
just the need to acceptance and connection. But what I wrote was there's too much fire for me to not put her as like a fire sun.
Right.
So I said honestly, I wasn't really sure where to put her.
Mhm.
We could say I think because she is such a solar character in the way that her personality is out there. She is very expressive.
Oh
We
yeah.
could say a Leo sun, but that would put her sun in the 12th house. No, that would put her sun in the second house for me. We could also say sun in Aries, consider it, which would, so I'm just going to say a fire sun. I'm just not committed on where I want to put her.
Interesting.
I could also say, honestly, I could say Sagittarius sun for her as well too. So, but I would say fire sun. So
Because of all the fire stuff, I was also tempted to go that route.
Mhm.
For me, it really came down to when she feels her emotions, she feels them in an incredibly explosive way.
Yeah.
Like she really doesn't access her emotions. She's very mental plane and kind of likes to stay in the thinking positive mental plane. She doesn't like to feel
Yeah.
what she's feeling,
Yep.
which put her as a Cancer for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so Cancer Sun, and then especially thinking about how like, you know how like Cancer Suns in real life, they tend to put up like a wall, but they want so bad to be loved and so bad to be touched. And so
Absolutely.
I thought of the story device of not being able to be touched because of the fire could represent that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but and then I almost had her moon in Leo, but I actually went with Sagittarius. But when
Yeah.
I was thinking about her moon in Leo, I was thinking about Cancer, Leo, Sun, and Moon, kind of like flip flopping them to like not be
Yep.
so comfortable, which may talk to like her kind of dark fate.
Yeah.
that,
Totally.
that she'll have in a lot of people's games.
Yeah. And also one thing about her Sagittarius, Jupiter, I think is interested in justice also. And like, I mean, I know that's a Venus thing as well,
Yeah.
but because she
Yeah,
tends
it's
to
different kinds of justice.
Yeah, like I mean, this is sticking up for the underdog kind of energy. I
Yeah.
feel like she has either way, which is a Sag thing, in my mind. So okay, cool. I feel like we
Like
have
Jupiter is like justice for like human rights, and then like Venus is like justice
sure.
for like harmony's sake.
Yeah, I mean, because both, I mean, Venus is balance and unification, and she
Right.
rules Libra, which is fairness and justice. But Jupiter um, Jupiter rules like the morality, essentially, and like how we construct like our laws in our society. So I think that's partially where we get that thing with Jupiter and Sagittarius. So okay, anything else about her? Should we move on to Will?
Yeah. Not gonna lie, I don't know too much about Will. I have a couple of placements for him that I really like.
Yeah. He's not my favorite character. I love Will, but I
Uh-huh.
just didn't play him a ton.
I honestly don't think that the writers gave him a lot.
Have you gotten to the? There's more stuff at the end though, because stuff with his dad.
I mean, Act 3 with his dad. Okay, so his relationship with his father does play into my
Okay.
stuff.
Okay, which I kind of forgot. I mean, I kind of forgot about that.
So
but
like, I have his son in the 8th house. Like,
okay, I'm gonna give background on him really quick. So
yeah.
Will is a human warlock. He is a sort of he is an adventurer with some fame around him as he is known as the Blade of Frontiers. He has struck a pact with a demon to give him his power. So that's what warlocks do in Dungeons and Dragons. And he fights on, like the path of right and justice, and is like a protector of the underdog and that kind of thing. Very charming, very bard-like. He is absolutely lawful good, absolutely. But yeah, very like you could absolutely see him as a bard, like singing and about poetry and very romantic.
I was very shocked that he wasn't a bard when I recruited.
Yeah. I think I wondered why they did it, but very, very attractive, very handsome, like definitely like a fantasy boyfriend. And he has a complicated relationship with his father. His father is an Archduke of Baldur's Gate, one of the biggest cities in the land where a lot of this game takes place. And he and his father are not in a great relationship. And you learn that his father is kidnapped later, and you try to rescue him. And there's this whole thing with resolving this relationship with him. A partial way through the game, Will starts out looking normal, looking very handsome, and then all of a sudden he sprouts devil horns and has these sort of scars. And he's sort of trying to get out of this pact he made with this demon, where he had no choice but to make this pact to save his friends and family, essentially. So that is Will. So what do you have for his for his chart?
This one was a really hard one for me because I went back and forth on a lot of energies.
Mm-hmm.
For his rising, as far as his build went, I was like, he's Sag or Aries. Like, there's this kind of like swimmer's thin athleticism build about him. And so that's what made me lean towards Sagittarius. And then I think
Mm-hmm.
that, like, because he is a rich boy, like, maybe as he gets older, you know?
Sure, sure.
I think Sagittarius rising also adds to his, like, showboatmanship. And it's like, clearly, in order to get the name Blade of Frontiers, you have to have been
Mm-hmm.
around. You have to have traveled. You have to have completed a lot of things so that people put that name
Mm-hmm.
on you. But his element for sure is like this mixture between fire and water, is what I put. Maybe like a hint of air in there. But one of the things that I am sure of, or at least I think I enjoy, is Sun in eighth house. So like father inheritance, like showing like maybe that there's this like money like background involved with him. I could be wrong, but that's kind of how I went about it. For sure,
Mm-hmm.
I actually think his moon is in Aquarius because of the humanitarian thing. Like he only signed this pact to save his people, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
greater good, subconscious, like always thinking about what's best for the people, what's like humanitarian energy. Like I'm going to take care of you and I'm going to sacrifice myself
Yeah.
to do it.
And he's
But
very valiant, like
yeah,
that kind of classic. He has like that classic like hero archetype, So
yeah. So I said Sag rising. I actually said Cancer Sun, but now I'm thinking
okay.
like maybe Pisces. I don't know because the two eyes, right? And that's what was trying to.
Oh, yeah, because one of his eyes is like fucked up later because of the
Yeah,
demon transformation kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I don't know. He was a hard one for me. I'm not gonna lie.
I
What about you?
started with Libra rising for him, because of the
Okay.
poetry and the romance and like the first sort of romantic interaction you have with him. You're dancing with him,
Ooh,
which
that's a good one.
yeah, which felt like very like he's very like the lead from Bridgerton season one.
No, 100%.
I forgot what his name. Oh, that
I
season
don't
was
know
really
who.
long.
I know who you're talking about, but I do not know his name.
I forgot his name too, but anyway, so but yeah, so you get the poetry, you get the lover archetype that you got from Libra Rising, which I definitely get from him,
Mm-hmm.
and just the gracefulness and like the
His
fact that
slender
he
build, his
fights.
arms. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
fact that his main weapon is kind of like a rapier, it
That
just feels
too.
like it's just like
Mhm.
that feels Libra Rising to me. And just because Venus rules Libra, love, beauty, grace, that kind of thing. So I would think
Yeah.
like a really strong Venus. I didn't say what his Venus was, but I was like, we have like a Venus type.
Mhm.
However, I could definitely see some Sagittarius placements. Maybe his ruling. Maybe we could say that his ruler was Venus and Sagittarius, possibly. Also, which would put his Libra, which would put his Venus in the third house, which is like a graceful communicator and storyteller and
Yeah, I'm
orator,
here for
which
that.
is very much,
No, I'm here for that.
I said Sun and Leo, because that
Okay.
would put, if we have a Libra rising chart in whole sign houses, that
Yes.
would put his Sun in the 11th house. Wait, Leo? Am I right?
Yeah, you're
Am
right.
I
11.
wrong?
It's two signs.
Uh,
Leo is two signs before Libra, so yeah.
Thank you. Okay. I have to always like count on my wheel in my head.
No.
But here we have the valiant kind of kingly energy, especially because, daughter, whoops, maybe he's trans. I don't know. Oh my God. Okay. So
That would make me love him even more.
I know. I'm like, oh my God. Okay, Willa, I don't know. Like, so, but we have the son of a powerful, sort of king type presence and sort of like political leader.
Hmm.
Like the sun also can represent the father in the chart as
Yeah.
well as Saturn. But also the 11th house is your adoring fans, the people that
Hmm.
love you, and like, the masses and the people, and like, that's just sort of,
Yeah. And
it's so
actually,
hit,
thinking
I
about
could see.
I like Sun in the 11th house better than the 8th because it's still father and like the richness, right? But I guess an 8th
Yeah,
house it would have meant that his father would have died when he was young. So
possibly. Yeah.
maybe let's move that to the 11th. I could see it. I could see it. It's funny because I actually started out with just planetary symbols for each one, and for Will I
Hmm.
do have the sun, but I never use Leo for whatever reason. Um,
Yeah. Yep.
so I could see that.
Yeah. So definitely like a big bright sun really near the top of the chart with that
Yeah.
one. I did say Moon and Virgo in the 12th. I'm going to give you my reasoning for this, because this would put the ruler of his. Wait, so his 10th house would be. So if we are using whole sign houses, his 10th house, which is career, authority figures, it would put the ruler of the 10th house in the 12th house of isolation and imprisonment. And his father is imprisoned at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he is also bound to a demon, like part of his like public image, which he now looks like a demon, is in this house of like,
so I wanted to work in like
isolation and imprisonment.
Like that kind of contract stuff.
Totally.
Like, I don't know how
contract with a demon is giving me like either way, like a dark house, 8th house, 12th house, 6th house, something where it's not super. And I'm not saying, by the way, if you're listening, you're like, I have a planet in this house, am I gonna be imprisoned? No, but it is more. It is. There are parts of your chart that are, they're less immediately fortunate. Essentially, there are challenges to kind of work around. So. Also, Moon and Virgo, I just kind of feel like if we were talking about just like the sign archetype, like I don't know. Why did I say that for him? I guess I could see it with like wanting to do the right thing, and also
like
what's sorry?
Like rules, like there are rules.
Yeah, and also being bound to his contract by like Mercury ruling contracts and that kind of thing. The other thing that I would say with Moon and Virgo is, no, I don't think I had a thought. I think my thought escaped me. I might come back to it, but that's where I got Moon in the 12th, just because it has a lot to do with isolation, imprisonment, banishment, that kind of thing.
No, I like your interpretation way better. To be honest, I wasn't sure about Will.
Yeah.
There was a lot that is, it's interesting. And it's part of the reason I don't use him as much is because his story is lacking. And so there's just like, there's not as much material for me to like chew on.
Mm-hmm.
Like even like I said, I started out with everybody's Mercury. His Mercury is still blank because I'm like, I don't know. He kind of communicates in a very not very effective way. I don't know.
Yeah. I thought the Libra was strong because he's always being shown with like the cup of wine and like
I don't know, Libra rising for him. Totally makes sense. My ex is Libra rising. They have the same basic body type. I'm
got it. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to Astarion, everyone's other favorite character, I feel like. And also some people hate him. He's polarizing, I would say. If you don't love him, you're likely to be like, fuck that guy.
Yeah. So, I want to fall in love with him, but I'm just like, man, you're such a tragic boy.
I know. Okay, so Astarion is high elf. So he is has like silver hair.
Those of you who are fantasy.
Exactly. Silver hair, really handsome, very charming, very witty, mysteriously pale, and you find out later that he is in fact a vampire. His background, he sort of comes from nobility. He was basically like brutally assaulted, forced into a life of servitude, and also forced sex work for many years. And his class is, he specializes in like he's a rogue, so it's a lot of deceiving and sneak attacks, and he is very charming, very witty, very biting. Doesn't let people get close to him, really doesn't like, because your characters like it or dislike it when you make certain decisions. He does not like helping people. He's like very much about himself, but over time he's very lovable in the sense that it's just kind of like a likable anti-hero essentially.
Yeah. Honestly, his constant disapproval went into.
Sometimes I'm like, go fuck yourself. I'm helping this innocent person.
Can I do anything nice?
I know. I swear to God, it's so irritating. Anything else about him? Deep intimacy issues when you are in a relationship with him. But the first time that you have sex is like, let's just get this over with. Like, it didn't mean anything. He broke up with me actually and was like, actually nothing we had meant anything. And I was like, oh my God.
Fucking toxic.
Yeah. It was, but I think it's probably stemming from trauma, essentially, 100%. When you look back.
He was hurt, and so he's passing on the hurt to you so he doesn't have to feel the hurt. Yeah.
Yes. So, okay. Where what do you think with him?
So I put just the symbol for Saturn next to his name. I was like,
Period. Absolutely.
in this story arc, like he is serving as the Saturn character, right?
Hmm.
And I mean, if you're writing, it's really fun to have a party full of each planet, so you have a lot of like dynamics.
Hmm.
So I put his sun in Capricorn. I feel like he must be a Capricorn.
Yeah, I almost went Capricorn Sun for him too.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
But because the only reason I put Capricorn Sun was because I put Leo Rising is because
Hmm.
he tries to charm you. He tries to he's an actor.
Absolutely.
He was also a politician before he was turned, and so that's
Yep.
like big Leo
I forgot about
Rising.
that. Yeah.
And then too, I
Also, that
thought
would put
how
his.
tragic.
Oh,
I
I'm
was
so
gonna say,
sorry.
no, you're fine. I thought how tragic to be Leo rising, so this big solar energy, and then you cannot see the sun, and then it just like is like a gut punch into his like
That is crazy. Okay. Also, because you said his sun is Capricorn
yeah
and he's Leo rising, so
yeah
and that would put his sun in the sixth house, which is also, it's the ascendant can't see the sun, or like the sun and ascendant can't see each other from the sixth house to the first, and also
yeah
that's servitude, being in
yeah.
like a life of
Okay,
servitude. So yeah. Anyway, sorry. Good analysis. Great. Continue.
no, you're fine. You're fine. And the reason I went with Capricorn Sun because I feel like his Mercury is in Capricorn as well. I
Hmm.
feel like he's pulls no punches with anything that he says to you.
That
Even the
is
way that he
true.
broke up with you, he's like,
Yeah.
"This is how it is." Like,
Hmm.
we probably have a Capstellium here too, so like, it's very much like I'm in control. Like you're not, and I'm going to tell you how I feel because there's no other point in doing otherwise. What did you have for Rising and Sun?
I said Aquarius rising.
Interesting.
So we're on the opposite side
Yeah,
because
yeah,
Leo and
yeah.
Aquarius are opposite sides. The only reason I said it is because I got Saturn from him too. I was like, Saturn being the planet of mastery, lessons, but also limitation, coldness, and delays, and
Yeah.
just very austere. He's very austere in his
Yes.
approach to things, not touchy feely. And so in traditional astrology, Saturn would rule Aquarius, not Uranus. And so I was like, there's a Saturnian energy with him. Also, the fact that he's super fucking old because of his vampirism, and I mean, elves live a long time anyway, but that's prolonged because of it. And also with Saturn traditionally ruling over death, being the last visible planet of the seven planets, being the boundary of life and death. There's like that hanging on death. There's like that interesting balance between those two things.
100%.
So I thought with Aquarius rising, because he's always seen with a book in camp, he's always sort of knee deep in a book. And because Aquarius rising being the sign of like really logical, very clinical, and very witty. It's like we have like this sort of witty, almost mercurial thing with him. But I feel like with the bitingness, I just was like, it was giving air rising sign to me, and an air rising sign ruled by Saturn. So that's where I went with it.
Yeah, totally.
And I thought also because in relationships, like Venus being in Aquarius is like more comfortable typically, and I'm not saying every Venus in Aquarius is like this, but more comfortable typically with like friends, associates, intellectual debates.
Yeah.
Not really has a harder time with emotional intimacy. That's sort of part of where I got that. And this is just yeah. And I was like, why don't we put Venus and Aquarius in the first house with that as well? So why not? And then I said, I think I like your interpretation better, honestly, but because I struggled with this one. And I also this was like the last few minutes before we jumped on. I was like, oh my fucking God, brain work.
Yeah.
And so I went with Gemini sun, and that would put his sun in the fifth house, just because I don't know how committed I am to a Gemini sun, but Gemini is a sign of the trickster, which he is very much deceptive, trickery, the rogue, I'm
going to show you one face, and if you find out that I'm a vampire, then
and also putting his son in the house of the performer, the creative, the performer, the actor. And also there's fifth house can be sex as well, and there's some stuff with like forced sex work with him that comes up, which there might be a link between that and some other more difficult part of his chart. But I thought that was some. Go ahead.
So that's actually why I put his moon where I put it.
Yeah, I put his moon in Capricorn.
Oh, I put his moon in Scorpio.
Where's his moon in your chart? In your chart for you?
Scorpio, 4th house.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's talk about that in a second. So I put his moon in Capricorn because, again, I was like, hard to reach. I think both. Well, actually, both moon. Okay, so we both have moons that are in either detriment or in fall. Basically, yeah. So because moon is emotions and your connection to. It's emotions, your immediate stimuli to the world, home, family, things, how you're nurtured. We put his moon in really challenging places because he's not a touchy-feely person. And I put his moon in the 12th, which can be forced imprisonment, frankly. And
oh, that's good. Yeah,
and just he's a hard bitch, but you love him. So okay, so talk about your moon in Scorpio, 4th house.
I feel like it had to do for me with home and belonging and trauma. And like when I think of trauma, I immediately think there's some Scorpio placements there. Not that every sign doesn't experience trauma, right? But like his specific brand. I was like, I feel like it's moon in the 4th house. I feel like it's Scorpio. And then because my rising was Leo, I was like, oh, well, shit, that would make it a Scorpio moon.
Totally.
So I was like, okay, let's go with that. That works for me.
And also, the emotional intimacy, trauma stuff connected to like that. Not saying every moon in Scorpio has emotional trauma, but like.
I mean, I am a moon in Scorpio, and I have.
I forgot about that. Well, it's funny. And also a creature of the night. You know what I mean? That's very moon in Scorpio, and the moon being in like the absolute bottom of his chart, right? Too.
That's what made it hard to analyze him because I was like, "Am I just projecting?"
Totally.
Because he has Scorpio Capricorn. I have a lot of Scorpio Capricorn.
I forgot about that. Absolutely.
But yeah, that's where I was thinking. I was thinking very Saturn, very trauma, but then like he's trying to hold it together and keep this act up where he's like, no, like I'm just a rich snob and blah, 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 There's definitely that at the beginning of the game, he is somebody completely different than he is at the end of the game, which I guess all the characters are like that. But for him in particular, there's an emotional opening if you romance him, especially.
Well, I would notice as I'm looking at all of my placements for everyone, I did a lot of stuff in difficult houses, like themes of outcast, imprisonment, or isolation, not because like all of the characters are like, I don't know. I just find that there are some similar themes with like, not quite fitting in with society or something. I don't know.
I feel like that lends to them being like, if you have these difficult placements, like you become a main character, right? Or it's like there's a story to tell here, and this specific story about having something inside your mind that you are afraid you're going to lose the battle to. There's a lot of
absolutely.
It's a metaphor for trauma, right? It's a metaphor for being taken over by the beast.
Yes, that's a good point. And I feel like because so many people have connected with the game on such a raw emotional level. The very handsome voice actor who played Astarion.
He's so gorgeous, and he actually
so hot.
I looked it up.
He is.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Leo. And I was like, beautiful. Okay, Leo rising. We're...
But he was talking about specifically a lot of trans men connect with Astarion, like his character. I forgot why exactly, but I feel like the characters in the game speak to a lot of outcast kind of types, basically. So, I thought that was interesting,
which only fuels this character is serving as Saturn in this story. It's like
totally
outcast,
absolutely, creature of the night. I love. Why did I put Moon in Scorpio for him? That's so silly. I'm changing that to. This is the one time where I'm like, bitch. I'm absolutely. You are correct. Moon in Scorpio is canon. I think for us. The thing is, I can see Capricorn though. I can absolutely see Capricorn of. I'm going back and forth. Where's Libra in my chart? I don't know, because sometimes I just... Okay, any last thoughts before we wrap up here?
Honestly, I thought it was a really fun thing to do. I would love to hear people's feedback. If
Yeah.
they have like placements they think that we got right, that they got wrong, that
Yeah.
you agree with. This is not a competition, but you know.
Yeah. If you have fervent thoughts and questions, you can email the podcast at to the stars astrology podcast at gmail.com. The email is also going to be in the show notes. You can or DM me on TikTok and Instagram at Dogstar Oracle. If you want to book a reading with me, it's Dogstar Oracle or Dogstar Oracle. And where can people find you again, Aster? Go ahead and repeat it
Yeah,
for the
so
people.
currently things are under construction. We're working on a website, me and my coven. That will be threecupcircle.com when we finally finish that. Right now, though, you can reach me on Instagram and TikTok at Aster Soluna, Soluna being like sun and moon shoved together. So ASTERSOLUNA. And yeah, you can book me for readings. We'll have a Reiki practitioner on there as well.
Nice.
And I look forward to just in general getting to connect with fellow nerds. And if you want
Cool.
to know the obstacles in your life and how to get over them, I'm your tarot guy.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. This was a lot of fun. I want to do more of these in the future because I think
Yeah,
that there's
no,
an
it's so fun.
astrology. There's an astrology of Buffy the Vampire Slayer in us as well. So we'll have to do that sometime too. So,
Don't give
please,
me
bitch, I'm
another
gonna go
reason to
off.
binge watch that show.
So, thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.